If I was Billet Labs, this is what I'd say to Linus. I'd say, Linus, no! Welcome to another hardware bench video. This one is literally just chatting shit about all this Linus, Billet Labs BS what's been going on over the last week or so. My take on it, having been a PC enthusiast for, 24 or 5 years, having had my own businesses twice, having had about 50 different jobs and dealt with all sorts of schmucks, is that what we've seen is stuff that's happening every day. For whatever reason, people didn't think the type of behaviour that's happened in the PC industry or whatever doesn't happen. I don't know, but anyway, you got three players. You got Linus, you've got Billet Labs, and then you got Gamers Nexus trying to weigh in. So my take on the Linus side of things is, the first thing he did wrong, the first mistake, is he said he would test this water block from Billet Labs, and they sent it, and he didn't have the right hardware to test it, i.e. didn't have a RTX 4090, which it was designed for, and he went ahead and tested it on an RTX 3090. That was his first mistake. Whatever way you look at it, that's not what it was designed for. Shouldn't have been testing it on there. So he should have just said to him, no, I'm not buying a card if you ain't got one. He should have just said, you send me the card and then we'll test it. And if they'd have said, no, alright, we won't test it, send them the thing back. So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two, which probably weren't Linus himself's fault, was the auctioning of the cooler, which there's people out there go, oh, they didn't sell it, they auctioned it to charity. It's bullshit. Auctioning, whether it's for charity or anything else, is a form of selling. He didn't have the permission to sell it. He shouldn't have done it, basically. He should have just sent the thing back and said, there you are, as agreed, whatever. I wouldn't have given him any money for it anyway. I mean, if the item didn't work very well, better off just shipping it back. Yeah, tested it, job done, as best we can. So that was his second mistake. And yeah, if I was Billet Labs, this is what I'd say to Linus. I'd say, Linus, no! Or anyone, as a matter of fact, because it's just wrong. You don't do but in all fairness to Linus himself, it would have been some schmuck in his flipping company, didn't really know what was going on, thought, oh, this is a nice block of copper, we'll auction it. So it's not totally his fault, but whoever was dealing with it in his company, they shouldn't have let that happen. That should have been like, yeah, we've tested it, ship it back, job done. So that's where I am on the Linus side of things. You got all this stuff about some of their charts aren't accurate and all that, but let's be honest, when it comes to PC hardware testing, what's new? I can literally put stuff on my benches, I can have the exact same setups multiple times, and there's always a little bit of a margin of error, or there'll be some flipping setting that's changed that I've not realised, and it's just, if you're testing multiple bits of hardware on different games and that, it's easy to get results what ain't always 100%. There could be some anomaly. If you're buying hardware, really you shouldn't be just, if you're going to spend hundreds of pounds, looking at one tech YouTuber's tests to see what hardware to buy. Really, you should be looking at a few different people, small channels, big channels, whatever. Back in the day, I used to buy multiple PC magazines, read up the different articles, and then obviously when the internet started, I started looking on forums, asking questions. So yeah, you should be doing that, not just looking at one hardware tester. So yeah, ideally you want your information to be as accurate as possible, otherwise you lose credibility. But ultimately it don't matter who you're dealing with, there's always going to be something, there's going to be some setting or something that could change, including with Gamers Nexus. I would not take every single result that Gamers Nexus have as being the result that you're going to have. So that's my that's my stance on them. With Gamers Nexus, I don't get me wrong, love the channel. I do tend to watch them quite a bit. I like the way they test. But at the end of the day, they're finding fault with Linus Tech tips. But every hardware tester's going to have a slightly different view on the best way to test and what to do. That's sort of what makes a bit of variety, isn't it? If everybody tested everything exactly the same, then you're probably not getting as true a result as if you get lots of different people testing things slightly differently, and then as somebody who's looking to buy or whatever, then you would take some sort of average of everybody's results and work out a decision from there, or at least that's how I do it. So it's good to have people like Gamers Nexus doing it their way. And if you're a bit of a geek like I am, yeah, I like looking at all the stuff they do and how they do it. But for the more casual person, I can see they probably like watching Linus better. And let's face it, he's going to roughly point you in the right direction, even if he's a couple of numbers out here and there. It's not really that big of a deal, is it? So that's my view there. And also with Gamers Nexus, I do think, as Linus is sort of competition to him, they would have took the opportunity just to give him a little bit of a dig. Which I can't blame them. Probably in their position I'd do exactly the same thing. So yeah, that's how I see them. Don't get me wrong, love Gamers Nexus, but they probably did nitpick a bit more than what they needed to. They're sort of kicking the man while he's down a little bit. And then the next one, Billet Labs. I've been doing a little bit of checking them out. Basically, they're incorporated. It's on Company's House in August 2022. One of them's an engineer. And from what I can make out, given that there's two addresses on the Company's House listed, one of them's flat, and the other one is a rented office space. And when I looked up the company where they rent the office space, basically you can actually hire a desk in there for 200 quid a month. So that's kind of what they use as their business address. It's basically a rented office, or more than likely a desk. Now I can't say how the company was formed and what it does, but if I had to put a guess on it, I'd say both of them have probably still got full-time jobs, or at least part-time. And I'd say they're doing this as a bit of a side hustle to build something up in the future. And one of them, if I had to put a guess on it, is most likely still working in engineering. And he probably got the copper out of the scrap for free. And he most likely has been making these blocks, or making what he's making, in his lunch times on the CNC machinery. Because there's no way they've got their own equipment for doing that sort of stuff in their office space. And if the guy's an engineer, he's not going to be paying another company to do it for him. He's at the very least going to go to his old job and just say, oh, if I nip in here and just use the machinery a bit. So the outlay that they've laid out is most likely minimal. And I'm going a little bit from my own business experience in the UK. And the time and the effort, I would say, is also minimal as well. I mean, you've only got to look at their website. It's a really basic WordPress site, which, I've done a bit of WordPress. I could knock a site up like that in probably a couple of hours, fairly easy, even being a bit rusty. There's nothing on there where anyone couldn't do in the flipping bedroom or whatever. And the other thing I think is, if they were serious about these coolers, at the very least you wouldn't send you one prototype all the way to America. What you would have done is at least had two prototypes, and just to stop anything going wrong, you would have sent the graphics card that that it was tested on there, so that that's a known good sample to save any sort of problems. Obviously you could let the people, you'll let testing it, you could let them put it on something else if they wanted to, but ideally you would send them a card. But the problem here is, if it's such a small company and they're just putting their own hands in their pockets every time it needs money at the moment, because I can't see that they would have probably made a lot. I'd never heard of them. They've got that little site. There's not that many people in the UK that are going to be building custom cooled PCs where you're going to need every single pipe and connector. I mean, I've probably only ever seen one in real life, maybe two, and that was at an overclocking bench meet. In real life, people, at least round there, just do not have them. Most you're going to get is an all-in-one cooler, and again, I think I'm the only person I know that's run an all-in-one cooler. Everyone else is air-cooled, maybe with a tower. So I would say that they haven't got the money to buy, and the business hasn't got the money to buy an RTX 4090. I would say one of them probably owns a 4090, so that's what they would have tested it on. But he didn't want to put it in the mail and send it over to the US, which I can understand. But if you're not willing to do that when you're dealing with someone like Linus, who's got however many million subscribers and people viewing, you're not really serious. And I just think they looked at sending it to Linus as a bit of a shortcut to get themselves up there quick, when really, in the situation they was in with one prototype, they'd have been better off dealing with somebody who's local to them, who they could at least physically see and let them test it and put it on their website or their YouTube channel. I mean, I know obviously I haven't got much of a channel at the moment, but I'm experienced enough when it comes to benchmarking and testing that I could have done a proper test on it, and I'm not that far from them. They could have at least supervised me doing it to make sure that I had everything set up to how they wanted it. So that would have been the more sensible option, but obviously that wouldn't have got them the views and everything they wanted. That would have been more work for them, whereas shipping just the cooler off to Linus and assuming that he had the hardware to test it on properly, well, that was the easy answer, weren't it?